Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. Going into the year 2025, ADBN Television will be giving you insights into special issues as it affects society in a series of special reports, much like the one you watched, greeting your screen as scheduled. Now, we're going to be speaking to our newspaper reviewer via phone lines this morning. As we look to establish that connection, be reminded issues on the news range from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's charge to state governors on the need to prioritize Nigeria's development, reminding them that local government autonomy is not a spite to rid them of their powers. Now, I'm joining the program this morning as we look to connect with Mr. Ben. He'll be speaking to this issue amongst others. If that connection is pulled through, let's see if we can hear him. Hello, good morning, and a happy new year to you.
Good morning.
Well, thanks for joining the program. Let's get your thoughts on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's charge to state governors, where he cited that local government autonomy was not a ploy to rid them of their powers, but that they should prioritize Nigeria's development starting from the grassroots.
Yeah, I think the statement is in the right direction and very clear. We are the federal, the state, and the local government. And it is important that every level adds value so that the people can feel the impact of governance. So clearly, the president putting it to the governors to say, look, we are not trying to take away your powers, we are not trying to reduce your influence, but we are trying to ensure that governance is entrenched. I think that statement is in the right order. When you talk about farming or you talk about infrastructure protection, because the truth is we don't have enough infrastructure, but the little that we have are also still being destroyed, being vandalized for what you would call private benefit and then creating further danger for the public. So when you devolve that responsibility to the local government and to the state government, then you expect that there should be better results over time. So both the local government and the state government have the land and the people in their domain to drive all form of national results, while the federal level should just provide support and enablement to ensure that there is free flow and free connection across the nation.
Now, in reference to your examples on the responsibilities of the different tiers of government, the federal government has always been the bane of debates by Nigerians. And yesterday, following these comments by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we saw accusations thrown against the People's Democratic Party that they have mismanaged the country whilst they were in power for a larger part of our democracy. But yesterday, the PDP also accused the APC of 25 trillion naira looting while calling for accountability. What do you make of this culture of blame game amongst the political parties we have in the country?
Well, I think that they are riding on the fact that people they are not holding them accountable. For me, any discussion that is not talking about taking advantage of the present to do better in the future is a useless discussion. So to a large extent, therefore, I do not see some of the responses of the PDP as a people who are interested in the future of the nation. I also believe that on the part of the APC, they need to let the past be in the past, take control of the present, and lead us into the future, where people can see it that we have a nation where food production at all levels will be properly done, where we will look at employment, where we will look at the creative sector, where we will look at what to do to ensure that insecurity is properly managed. It's a clear instance that when you talk about banditry in some part of the north, it is those bandits that the people in the rural area knows and see. So a lot of these places are ungoverned. Politicians come and campaign, win election and go away. And of course, these touts are the ones who are always there. And so we should be more engaged in what do we do to ensure that people at the grassroots are feeling the impact of governance. The man on the street does not care whether it's APC or PDP if we want to be sincere with ourselves. You only care with the fact that you want fuel, the fuel is there. You want to travel, the road is good and safe. You decide to farm, you know where to get your input and buy. You need fertilizer, you can get it. You produce your food on the farm and there is road to get it to the market. So if the discussions are not around those things, I think that the parties are just wasting their time.
Now, Mr. Ben, before we go any further with the conversation, could you kindly step away from a device that's giving you a holdback? We can hear the reverberation from your voice at your end. So could you kindly step away from that device giving us that holdback?
I am not with any device.
Okay, we'll actually check that it's not our end to having feedback so we can have a smoother conversation. Now, in keeping with the promises President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made, he's also talked about two issues on the table. He's talked about the National Values Charter and the constitution of a youth confab to begin in the first quarter of 2025. How crucial are these two initiatives?
Well, absolutely, they are very crucial. For me, we need to ensure that people can add value at their levels. That's number one. And then number two, there is clearly that need to engage the youth, because whether we like it or not, they are the future of the nation. And if they are not engaged, and if they are not involved, then the future of the nation is in danger. Now, when you engage them at their levels as youth, they come to recognize responsibility, they come to see opportunities, and then they can leverage on the opportunities by taking responsibility and be sure that tomorrow will be better than today. Whether we like it or not, the way forward is not backward. And if you must go forward, you have to take charge and control of what you have now while defining the pathway into the future.
Now, in taking control of the challenges, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has also promised to bring down inflation from 34% where it is now to 15%, reassuring on food security. If you remember earlier in 2024, there was a declaration of a state of emergency on food security. Not much change following that declaration. Are you anyway optimistic that this promise will be fulfilled in 2025 with a reduction in inflation and the provision of food security?
Well, when you declare state of emergency, for me, it's a cliche. It's more an approach of you want to throw money at the problem, and there are people waiting to hijack the money. But if we're talking about realities, we need to see what are the state governors doing. How many state governors are ready to go the pathway of Niger? Where is, as of today, where are we on dry season farming? What volume, what tonnage of maize are we expecting in the next 2-3 months? what volume of beans, what tonnage of rice, what tonnage of soya are we going to be turning in? If the governors have no program on that, if the local governments have no information on that, if the agri agencies have no information on that, then I think that we are not serious. But if they are able to hone in and get down to the grassroots with the programs of farm input, of land cultivation, of machinery support, of grassroots emancipation, then you expect that prices can come down. And of course, on the other hand, insecurity must be tamed. We must give people assurance that they are secured, and the people must have that feeling of that security. And there has to be a connection between the production zones and the market zones. That talks about road, that talks about rural infrastructure, that talks about fueling, that talks about transportation. So if all those things are linked together, then we should get results. It's not just declaring a state of emergency, it's not just throwing money at the problem, but rather it is at getting the people involved and determining the processes and being able to put data on the table that shows this is what we have done, this is what we are doing, and this is what we will do. And so both the investor and the farmer can begin to see the link, and then people can begin to plug in at the level where they should take responsibility so that we get results. So inflation can be crushed, inflation can come down, especially as it affects food. But there has to be action in the direction of engaging, not just talking and throwing money at the problem.
Now, there's mention about how much of a success or a failure the food import duty waiver has been. What do you make of that initiative of the government to give a free import waiver window for importation of certain food commodities?
Well, I cannot say it has been effective. Like I said, it's more of throwing money at the problem, even at that. Government is just saying, okay, we will not collect this money, go and bring the food. But have we removed the bottlenecks at the port? Have we defined the police, the transportation system? When the food arrives at the various ports in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and the rest, what is the cost of transport that will bring them from those places to the hinterland? So if you remove the tariffs and then the landed cost is cheap, but when you look at you need ₦1 million to move maybe a 20-feet container from Lagos to Abuja. By the time you add that to the food, you will still realize that the price difference wouldn't be much. So until we address the issue of transportation and possibly bring it down sustainably, every other effort may not be meaningful. The food will be cheap at the coast, the food will be cheap on the farm, but getting it between where it is produced or where it is imported and the point of consumption, when you look at the overhead on transportation, on accommodation for those who will need to sleep in the hotel, and all the other challenges on the road, including the numerous produce taxes and produce touts, then you will realize that the price at the destination market will continue to be high.
Now, in moving on to another critical issue, I know the president is assuring the governors that this talk about local government autonomy does not in any way threaten their powers, but we can't fail to mention certain examples that have been set in how overbearing some governors can be, particularly in Edo State, where the governor, Senator Monday Okpebolo, has come under some criticism following the suspension of local government chairmen in a somewhat controversial manner. What do you make of this development?
Well, I think that the journey for local governments has only started, and we are at the very beginning. We need to look for more into if the local government will be autonomous, how do we bring the people in office to office? Because when you bring God's son to an office, you expect a godfather to be in charge. Now, in that situation, therefore, I think we must focus more in the direction of ensuring that the election of local government officials, that the chairman and the councillors, are not tied to the apron of the governor. So if the governor can no longer determine who is elected and who is not elected, then you expect that some measure of freedom will exist for the elected officials, and then they can begin to think of performance. But if they all need endorsement and approval of the governor to take those offices, then you cannot rule out an attempt by governors to control them. And then if you are also seeing local government as an important entity in entrenching democracy and governance, you would also not expect that a new governor will be very comfortable with a set of chairmen imposed by his predecessor, because they have the opportunity of ensuring that whatever he's doing is not well felt at the grassroots. So you need the chairman and the governor to be on the same page for the development that is desired to drive through and percolate to the grassroots. So to a large extent, we need to start from reforming the electoral system that bring the chairman into office. That way we can guarantee the autonomy of the local government, and then we can begin to hold them responsible for all their actions and inactions.
I like the fact that you've brought into question the agenda setting for 2025, which many Nigerians agree that electoral reforms and probably a constitution amendment top the list. Now we're seeing the PDP and opposition leaders also lend their voice into setting an agenda for the president and a better Nigeria in 2025. What are some other areas in this agenda setting, much like the electoral reforms and constitution amendments, that you think are crucial towards achieving a better year in 2025?
Definitely, we need electoral reform. We need to adjust our laws. And of course, we need more transparency across board. What is our budget? What is the budget meant to attack? What was the budget in the previous year? How has it been spent? Which projects are ongoing? Which projects need to be further strengthened? We need to look at that clearly. And of course, at the macro level, we need the regulators, the CBNs of this world, the NCC of this world, to ensure that they are adding value at their level, and that they are checking to be sure that whatever policies have been put in place are being obeyed.
Now,
to a large extent, So to a large extent, it's that the government must work in stock, and we must ensure that everybody is adding value at their level, and that for all decision making, we are talking to the right data. Not just vague, not just assumption, not just cliches, but that we have data at the appropriate places, and decisions are speaking to rewrite records.
The challenge with data, Mr. Ben, you would agree, is the lack of census. This national exercise that has continued to evade Nigeria 16 years down the line, we continue to approximate our population as a people, and even in planning, in our housing deficit, we are unable to account for our actual population, only using projections to plan. Do you think that this is a major challenge with our data, And even when we talk about our National Social Register, the credibility is also called into question based on these indices.
Definitely not having a proper censor is a problem. Not also having a structure for gathering data from the grassroots is a problem. I will keep insisting that perhaps the federal government needs to have a staff that you will call federal liaison officer or whatever name you can give them in every electoral ward, who is employed to be resident there, who is responsible for some form of political education, for data gathering, for updating the social register and other things like that. And then when we talk about census, I think our census is long overdue. And in the next census, we should not shy away from gathering data. We should include the place of birth, the state of origin, your religion, every information that let's put it on the data. And then we can now structure and know what we should use going into the future. Not that you say, okay, don't talk about religion, don't talk about tribe, don't talk about... We should talk about everything on the data page. And then you can sort them and use the right information at the right time. And if as much as possible, it has to be biometric based so that we know exactly how many we are, who are the constituent people in the system, where do people live. And so if we are deploying resources, where do we need to build more houses, for instance? Where do we need to expand the road? Where do we need to direct the rail? Where are the farming activities? Where are the training activities? What do the people do? All those information should be properly and effectively captured. And that way, if we have the right sensor and we have right individuals feeding information to the center, we will not be living by bogus assumptions.
Well said. In moving to item number 3 on our discourse this morning, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, are in the headlines again this morning, and they seem to be joining voices with a lot of Nigerians who believe that education is not properly funded, with only 7% of our 2025 budget allotted to the sector. They are also bemoaning the loss of the young minds and brains to other climes following a poor welfare and remuneration of lecturers. This ASUU conversation is back again in 2025. Many had hoped that the woes that plagued the education sector in 2022/2023 are long gone, but it seems to be a recurrent conversation. How best would you prefer solutions to somewhat ameliorate the incessant strike in our tertiary institutions?
Well, I think that we are begging the question. Every day we are establishing new universities. 2 weeks ago, the National Assembly was talking about a polytechnic where there were 71 students and over 100 staff. Now, as long as we are not focusing on capacity utilization of existing universities and infrastructure, and we are putting money into setting up new universities every day, you will realize that this funding will continue not to be sufficient. Because the question will be, do we need 200 universities? The answer is no. But how many do we have today? Over 200, private and public. So to a large extent, therefore, I would think that ASUU should have contend with the need for non-proliferation of universities, rather expanding the capacity of existing ones. For me, the University of Ilorin is underutilized, ABU is underutilized, University of Ife is underutilized. They have the land, they have the resources. So put more money, expand the capacity, and let's have results. But when that is not being done, but you have float every Senate session, a new bill is here to establish a new university. So I think it's a problem. Now, university autonomy has been argued for over and over again. Why don't you make them autonomous? Why don't the university begin to drive their own processes? Why are they not looking at endowments? Why are they not looking at industrial connectedness? We are here, we produce how many PhD in a year across our universities? But what new knowledge is actually added to the system? What new research are we bringing up to use? So ASUU has a point, but the system as a whole needs some form of re-engineering and refocusing. I think that we should put peg to government establishing new universities and polytechnics, and rather expand and enlarge the capacity of what we have on ground, so that we can engage more people, so that we can take more students, and of course we can responsibly grow into the future.
Well said then. Let's also talk about the Nigerian Labour Congress also making the news alongside Kano state government. And it's back to the issue of tax reform bills. That is another controversial issue in the news. The National Assembly has said it is given time for more deliberations and considerations before it revisits it upon resumption. But we continue seeing strong calls for an outright withdrawal of a bill which has been purported to benefit more than 90% of Nigerians. What's your take on this?
Well, a lot of people benefit in where we are coming from, either because they are part of the people collecting the unaccountable taxes, or they are part of the people evading the tax process. Now, therefore, if you decide to introduce a process that will bring them to order and make them pay the right taxes, what you will discover is that they would oppose the system and want the status quo to continue. I think that we need a tax reform bill. I think that we need to fight multiple taxation. I think that we need to address tax evasion and tax avoidance as much as possible. Now, if that is to be done, and remember that tax monies are much more accountable. And because it is accountable and can be data-driven, people who don't want accountability cannot support the tax reform. Now, we are in a democracy. The minority should have their say, and the majority should have their way. So I believe that we need to open the bill to discussion, and let everybody contribute, and let's hear the voice of the majority, and let's hear the concerns of the minority, and let's find a mid-ground and go forward with what is best for the generality of the nation and for our future. So for me, the bill is there, the bill should be debated, everybody should contribute, but what is in the best interest of the nation and the populace must be allowed to happen.
Well, the NLC also has another demand from the president. They're talking about revisiting the wage in terms of reviewing it in line with the current economic hardship. While some states are yet to fully implement the newly agreed upon minimum wage of 70,000 naira, do you think that these conversations of a wage review would see the light of day?
Well, annual increments are things that can be necessary. So a wage review can come into fruition. But definitely you've got to match that vis-a-vis productivity. You've got to match it with revenue. You've got to see what is coming in. So it's not a one-sided event. Like I would always say, there are people, there are processes. So when you have an end, you want a better life for all, then you have to look at, if you ask for a new wage, what is the revenue to back it up? And that's why we are talking about tax reform. The tax reforms, for me, will bring us to a point where the state government can be sure of what is coming in from tax, because it's something you can project, it's something you can be sure of. And then I want to believe that wage bills should be tied to a percentage of the tax that is coming into the government, so that whatever money comes from other sources are used for capital projects and for development intervention, so that we don't eat all our money today and then wait till tomorrow. We had money as a nation in the 70s, and people earned all manners of bonuses and all manners of salary, and we imported everything from milk to pan to whatever, to roasted chicken, to chicken. The things we could produce, we began to import because we had money. And that's because we were not development focused at the time. So at this time, yes, it is important to put the wages on the table, but the wages should be tied, in my opinion, to some form of percentage of tax, not even all the tax. Because that's why you say they are civil servants, right? Civil servants, for instance, are supposed to be earning what we call taxpayers' money. Is it not? So the tax, therefore, should contribute significantly, if not all, to what constitutes the wage bill of civil servants in every state and at the federal level.
Well, in closing, let's touch on one more subject before we wrap it up. And this is the coming on board of the renovated Warri refinery, if I can put it that way. We now hear talks of the NNPCL looking to cut supply to Dangote refinery in the Naira for crude deal that was supposed to sweeten the deal, especially with the available crude and how they plan to share it between Warri, Port Harcourt and Dangote refinery. What do you make of this development in line with the NPC's considerations to cut supply to Dangote?
Well, the thing will be this: if the government or the refineries are back to work, definitely you cannot leave them to go importing crude, right? Knowing fully well what our procurement processes are, you cannot leave the government refinery to import crude. So you need to make adjustments and give them what they need to produce. Dangote is private, so you can buy crude from anywhere and can sell to anywhere. But more importantly, it's a call for us to improve local production. If we improve, because we have the crude, we have the deposit. So if we can improve from whatever barrels we are doing now, which they say is 1.7 million per day, maybe to up to 2.5, 2.6 million per day, then we should have enough to meet our international obligation while sustaining the local refining. But obviously, there is the need for that increased production across board, especially, and then of course we need to reduce stealing. NNPC claim they have technology now that can monitor this and monitor that. So let's see how it goes down the line. When production improves, I am sure that Dangote, Bua, or any other refinery coming upstream will eventually be able to get crude. But we've got to do more crude production, step down on stealing, and ensure that the output available to the nation per day is growing proportionately with the refining capacity that is on ground.
Now there's also been talks about getting an affordable price for Nigerians. We saw Dangote enter a partnership with MRS and a minimal reduction in price just before the Yuletide season. But on the average, across Nigeria, it talks about one liter at almost 1,000 naira. Do you think that with this coming on board, we can achieve the affordability in price Nigerians clamor for?
Well, if more refineries are on board, there is no way that we will not get a reduction in price. The truth about production is this: you're talking about daily production, and that talks about your storage capacity. So if you don't ask people to buy, it gets to a point where you might also have to stop producing because what you have produced has not been shipped. And when the process also continues, we expect that over time, the cost of production should actually be going down. So if the cost of production begins to go down, it's only reasonable that the producers will reduce the price to the local market. Because whether they like it or not, the local market is still the easiest place to push the product to. Because if you push the product to nations that possibly are not ready to take it immediately, when you put your badges on the sea, you eventually have to pay their insurance. And if they cannot bat at the port of destination, you cannot load new ones. So to a large extent, I believe that we first need to get the production right, get the refining right, and then over time, the price would ultimately drop to a much more appreciable level than what it is today.
Well, in closing, I'd like to get your thoughts and wishes for Nigeria as a country going into 2025.
Well, my wish is that we would get it better with ongoing reforms, that there won't be policy somersaults, but I will begin to see the effect, that the result of all the roller coaster in 2024. So overall, 2025, I believe, should be a better year for all Nigerians. And the Lord will keep us alive to enjoy the better things ahead.
Well, thank you very much, and we wish you the best of the year ahead. We appreciate you.
Amen. You're welcome.